What's up, fantasy champions? Spotlight Sports Network is excited to tell you about an amazing deal from Thrive Fantasy, your place for daily fantasy sports and esports. Right now with promo code SS Network, Thrive Fantasy will match up to $50 of your first deposit. So go to thrivefantasy.com and sign up now with promo code SS Network. That's thrivefantasy.com, promo code SS Network.
Well, all right, folks. Well, it's about that time again as we are live here on all platforms, Facebook, YouTube, and of course on Twitter. Unfortunately for all of our Twitch fans, we are not up on that live stream, but we will be some point soon. But we want to welcome you guys and introduce to you guys the newest podcast here on the Spotlight Sports Network. That is known as Turn 2 Podcast, strictly about baseball. And because the baseball season's right around the corner, we've got spring training underway, pitchers and catchers report. We've got a lot of exciting stuff. So, of course, as you know, here up on the show, starting the podcast, yours truly, Jake the Snake Silva here from the Snake Sports Talk Show. And, of course, one of my good colleagues here and one of my co-hosts that's going to be helping me here with this show is Jeff Hammond, a.k.a. Hammer, from the one house you go to for Mets and Raiders content. That is Hammer's house. What's going on, man? Man, baseball season's right there around the corner. You're excited. I'm excited. Man, it's going to be a lot of fun through this up-and-coming season.
Man, it's here. It's finally here.
It's officially here.
It's officially here. Pitchers and catchers reported last week, within the last 2 days. The rest of the guys reported, and I couldn't be happier. We're looking at a full season this year. God willing, hope nothing derails that this year. But definitely looking forward to the start of spring training and definitely the start of the 2021 MLB season.
Absolutely. So am I, and especially with, obviously with what, last year brought us, especially with the hit of the pandemic and everything else, we just were not sure when exactly the season was going to start up. It was right here at the middle of spring training until you got into March, and that was when initially everything started to shut down and close up. And that was what was kind of, baseball fans like you and I were kind of panicky because we were not sure when the season was going to start back up and when we were going to get this season underway. But they managed to make it a shortened season of only 60 games and then get the postseason and the rest of the year out of the way. And so here we are again in 2021. Spring training's underway. You got all 30 clubs right now that are just ready to get back up onto the field, ready to get to work. And this is going to be interesting as well, because think about it. You had a mixture of all of the major and minor league players. Now, of course, the minor league teams and all the farm systems never played last season. Right. They didn't even play on their own. So they ended up, mixing the groups in with a couple of youngsters and such. So this is going to be an interesting storyline for this year and how, spring training is really going to shape up for all 30 of these clubs.
It's difficult right now, especially I'm already hearing some guys that have reported they're already doing the pressers and stuff since they just got to their facilities. And a lot of the guys right now, I'm noticing, they said last year a lot of them were out of their regular routines of things, and it was the most troubling thing for them last season was to try to get into their regular routine, and everything was sidelined with COVID and everything. So a lot of them have said in their press conferences within these last 2 days, it's like trying to get back in a regular routine, things that they were accustomed to be able to perform at 100% this coming season.
Right. Absolutely. And that's what's kind of just, that's obviously what's going to be, the biggest challenges, because of course, last year there were so many back and forth negotiations between, the players union and the owners and so much more. And they were not sure when they were going to get the season going. And you and I had agreed we should have at least got at least 90 to about 100 games all last season. But because of the long delays and nothing was, set in stone between, the players unions and many others in the front offices, that's what was kind of the unfortunate part, to where the commissioner had to basically put the boot down and said, listen, we're going to have a season either way. But now it was shortened up to 60 games.
Everything
and now
for them, a lot of them, it was all about money, whether it be in the owners or their players. It was about the money, and that was preventing them from going back to doing something they originally grew up doing that they weren't getting paid for, that they loved. And now for a lot of them, it's all about the money. And that's one thing that definitely upset not just me, but baseball fans as a whole. It was something that should not have been a topic for discussion. These were unforeseen circumstances. You guys should be grateful that you still have jobs while so many lost their jobs throughout this pandemic. Like, you guys still make a living. You guys are under contract. You're still getting paid. It might not be exactly what you were expecting to get this past season, but you're still getting paid. So,
right, exactly. Yeah, and that, exactly, because of the fact of, and ultimately this is what kind of got me. You won't get paid unless you're out there playing on the field. And that's kind of the ultimate thing about that, because think about it, with all these contracts here in baseball, knowing that there's no salary cap at all, they haven't really kind of, tightened the money, the actual just like money production into this league at all. They haven't tightened that up, and you think about that with a regular player's contract. They get paid by the second, the minute, the hour, and then of course by the day when they're on the field. And you would be surprised, when you break down a player's contract when they're out on the field, how much that they get paid and what they do to get paid. And it just kind of surprises me. And yet they're going back and forth on their contracts, and they're going back and forth of, well, this COVID, this pandemic, and all of this, it's a risk. But at the same time, you're getting paid to play, the game. And the only people that I really feel for are the people in the concessions. And if they're not if they're not having any fans in the stands, that's initially what's hurting businesses. And that's what's hurting some of the, the people that all they do is try to, make it an experience for all of the fans. You didn't hear any Major League Baseball player donating money to any of these people that worked in the concession stands. But when everything went down with the NBA, you had guys, Zion Williamson, who was in his rookie year, donated money to these employees that are working the concessions at Smoothie King Arena. Like, you guys are constantly complaining about money, and you see what these other people had to go through as a result of the pandemic. The least you could have did was something like that and donate money to these employees that are out of the job right now because there's no fans allowed into the ballparks. Exactly. Yeah. And then it would have helped out with, as far as, food production, would have helped out with, just beverages and everything else to keep them running as a business, and you think about it, because now think about what's going to happen when, the ticket sales start to come up. When we start to get more and more fans in the stands, ticket prices are obviously going to get expensive because of the fact of they have to now recover from what they've lost due to the pandemic. And so that's initially what's kind of being, the hard press in this whole thing. So that's where I'm just like, listen, get on the field, play, and don't complain, because initially baseball is just a kid's sport. It's all about having fun. And when you get concerned with politics and money, that's the part then now that just kind of takes the fun away from the game. And people can't really enjoy it the same. I mean, when you look at old traditional baseball, there are a lot of fans that still are stuck around, that they've loved those times. And then you look at it this year. I'm not saying, you can't let the kids play. Absolutely. But at the same time, be humble. Be humble in every circumstance, because initially those are where certain people are going through times very, very differently versus when somebody's just basically asking for more money and all of this just to play on a field. Like it makes no sense to me.
Like, this is one thing that I've always said when it comes to people that become professional athletes or people that succeed in life.
Mhm.
And it seems to like be out the window with a lot of these people, but never forget where you came from.
Right.
And you said it, like, these guys need to be more humble, but it's like, don't forget where you came from. Don't forget where you started from when it came to doing what you're doing now. Because this is something you grew up playing. It was something you were having fun doing as a kid that you weren't getting paid for. And now that you do get paid, it's a whole different thing. Like, oh, this isn't just me having fun with it. This is a business as well. Like, don't look at it that way.
Right.
Do not look at it that way.
Right. And initially look at some of these international players. I mean, you look at it from like kids from the Dominicans or kids from Puerto Rico and from Cuba, and a lot of them. Some of these places that they've come from are not really like, they're all in poverty states. They're all in those types of aspects. And a lot of them, the ways of life when they were there is, you either had to work your tail off or you weren't going to make it. You weren't not going to survive. And however you were going to do it, that was initially what was the plan in place. If you saw yourself having a future as a Major League Baseball player, then that was initially where you worked twice as hard, if not 3 times, just to make it there. I mean,
Absolutely.
You look at a lot of these kids like, Fernando Tatis Jr. I mean, the fact that he's got a fat contract now, being a kid, in an international country, and now being, playing in this game and being one of the richest shortstops in the game. That's just kind of those things. You work twice as hard, but at the same time, there's always room to give. There's always room to give to helping everybody else out up in need. Then that's what strengthens, I would say, the fan base. When you give sometimes and you actually look out for some of these fans, because initially they want to be in the field. They want to be out there in these ballparks. I mean, hell, I'd love to take a vacation to go out to San Diego just to be in Petco Park to enjoy the weather and enjoy baseball. And even going out here to Summerlin and LV Ballpark to be sitting over there on poolside in the outfield just to be watching a baseball game. Sometimes there's usually times where there's rooms where you got to give. And initially that's where the reward behind that comes from.
I've already started looking at like the Mets schedule already this season, and like I'm looking at games I want to go to, and one of them right off the bat is between the weekend of like June 11th through the 13th when San Diego comes to town. I want to see Tatis play in person. I really do. Yes, I'm a Met fan, and it probably sounds weird, but like when it comes to being a fan of a sport, and like when it comes to, I'm a lifelong fan of a lot of sports, but like I will come across players that grab my attention, players that I respect, players that I get entertained to watch. He's one of those guys right now that like, if I had the opportunity this summer, I would absolutely love to be at Citi Field to see him play in person.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I would be up in the same boat. If I got a player that, like really catches my attention, a kid that, he's got a lot of potential. He's a guy that really is a difference maker, in the game. And I think is one that brings a lot of energy that, people just can't take their eyes off the television to watch. Then that's the type of player that I'm just like hoping for best things for. Even if it's not your team at all, or even if you ain't just a baseball fan, or, if you're just a regular baseball fan, this is a guy that has a lot of talent. He's energetic, and he's also got a really good defensive glove, got a really good stick, and he's got a lot of speed, and this is a guy that possesses all of those tools. And all he's basically trying to do is just break every single unwritten rule in baseball, apparently, that, a lot of us just can't seem to get over.
I can't be mad at that at all, though, because that's
absolutely not.
When it's come to any sport I've ever played, it was always about having fun and just doing what I love to do. But like, I would make the most out of everything. Would I celebrate here and there? Absolutely. Who doesn't want to do that, especially as a kid? Like, the younger generation are going to be watching Fernando Tatis Jr. and they are going to want to emulate almost anything and everything he does. And there's nothing wrong with that. And to touch on what you said before in regards to like players that you enjoy watching, like I'll watch a guy in my division when it comes to football, and that's Patrick Mahomes. Mm-hmm. From the time he came into the league, I watched him when he played at Texas Tech. I said, this kid is going to be something special. And he started when he became a starter. You saw all the flashes and everything he could do. He's a great athletic talent. He's a great kid. He just had his first child the other day. Congratulations on that. Mm-hmm. I feel like guys like that are the type of role models that the younger generation need to look up to when it comes to sports.
Right. Exactly. And that's initially what it's supposed to be, and that's why I'm just like, when you look at some of these athletes and some of these players, I mean, there are some that like, they're damn good ball players. The other thing I look at it, like if I had to look at somebody that's humble in the game, by far, hands down, has to be Buster Posey. I mean, the guy is just as humble as he could possibly be. And yes, the fact of the matter is he plays for the San Francisco Giants, but he's probably one of my favorite players to watch. He's a guy that, he carries a great head on his shoulders. He's another guy that, like, even just this past year, he didn't even participate in this season. And the fact of he was looking out for his family, spending a lot of quality time. And I can't bash on that. Because the fact of this is a 3-time World Series champion. This is also a guy who initially, is the runner for MVPs, NL Rookie of the Year, and a guy that, he's accomplished so much. And not to mention, too, signing a 9-year contract extension with the Giants. So that's a guy that, like, is so humble. And when you watch him in press conferences and some of these PR, these PR conferences, he's always so humble about it, and he's real about everything. And that's why I'm just like, I can't bash him. If he makes that decision, I'm thinking it's wise, it's understandable, take that time. And then, of course, you get some of those players that are just like, oh, dear Lord. Like for me, it's always Manny Machado. It's a love-hate relationship when you watch Manny Machado, because sometimes you can hate the fact that, like, his personality is he's such a prima donna and he's all of that, this and that, but you can't mistake the fact that his stick is stupid. And you got his glove out over there in third base. So it's like, the third base side's usually shut down. So
it's just real, like it's scary to see how the left side of that infield is going to look for San Diego.
That is going to be the most heavy, overpaid side of the infield I've ever seen. That's $600 million you're talking about on the left side of an infield. I don't know how they're going to deal with that. And then you got Eric Hosmer at first. So, that is going to be interesting, but we'll definitely break it down as we go. So, what's interesting, and I just seen this earlier, and I could not help but laugh. But Mike Trout, and for as great as he is in this game, I mean, a guy that's a consistent 5-tool stud, guy that, no matter what, he's always putting in the work and he's always putting in the numbers and he's always top 5 in the MVP votes. But here's the thing. He just commented after what last year brought him, and they saw all of the numbers and all of the statistics. He had 17 home runs last year. He had a 281 batting average. And of course, his RBIs was right there at like about the 50s, 60s. And all of that, he basically said, I wasn't good enough. That wasn't really a good season. I can understand him being ranked 20th with his batting average of 281, but he finished 5th in AL MVP. And a lot of people are kind of questioning, how could you say that this was not a good season out of you? I understand with Mike Trout. I really, really do. Because of the fact of, it ain't even just his personal stats he's worried about. But when in the hell are the Angels actually going to do something right for him? Because you and I have been watching this thing since 2012. What the hell? And ultimately, because, listen, they fired Billy Epler, which thank God that they did. Because this is a guy who was the one who took care of the contracts of C.J. Wilson, Albert Pujols, then was responsible for Shohei Ohtani and so many players, and then was responsible for Anthony Rendon. and then having the max contract for Mike Trout. So you're telling me by age 39, 40, you're finally going to give him a ring? Like I'm just very surprised at that, but that was one that was a good chuckle for me.
I think I kind of understand where he's coming from, and more or less just being hard on himself more than anything else, because I guess maybe he's his worst critic. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it's like all the terrible circumstances this past season, the fact that you guys only played 60 games, you weren't even sure if you were going to play because you were expecting your first child. Right. And I believe you were out for a period of time as well when that had happened. So I don't really fully understand where he's coming from in regards to that. Like, now you're going to be somewhat a slight return to normalcy in regards to how many games you're going to be able to play this season. Right. You may be
with the fullest expectation that you're hoping the Angels are going to get into the postseason.
Right. And considering that this is, as of right now, breaking news, folks, Albert Pujols will be retiring after the end of the season. That broke probably within like the last hour or so. I saw that and was a little surprised.
So you know what this means? This means they have to make the postseason.
They got to win one for Pujols.
They have to.
Now.
They have to.
It's not about Trout, who's the face of the franchise. Now they have to win it for Pujols. Like,
yeah, in order to solidify that 10-year contract that they signed in 2012. Oh my God! Wow.
Jay, there is no doubt about
no doubt about it.
Famer. Absolutely. And he was another one of those players that I enjoyed watching, especially when he was playing for St. Louis.
Oh, man. You know what? The guy in his rookie season, I mean, you're talking about a guy who was an organization that was transitioning from Mark McGwire to Albert Pujols.
Yep. I
mean, that kid initially, when he was just a young outfielder, and all he was hitting was beans, and everybody called him the machine. Numbers don't lie. I mean, this was a guy that you could not pitch around. This was a guy that was willing to destroy baseballs left and right, and all of just that power and that torque, all from just the lower half, was ridiculous. And I enjoyed watching him in the National League. I think he was an absolute stud. And since winning 2 World Series from 2006 and 2011, I mean, the Cardinals were something else. I mean, this is a team that, we're kind of the middle in the pack type of organization that would make the postseason, get to as far as, the NLCS at times, and then would initially make it into the World Series. And so now, transitioning from National League to American League, only being in the postseason once, that this is where it really kind of weighs in on the team. And I said this before, that the only player that they should have never whiffed on and should have never traded away was Mark Trumbo. That should have initially been your first baseman, and then putting Pujols there at the DH to give him more time. Yeah, or you had to swap him.
Yeah, but not giving him that much money if he was going to be a DH. That's for damn sure.
But this is also too where you could. But the other issue of that is pitching. You heavily relied on Jared Weaver for so long that he just became ran down and washed up.
Yep.
CJ Wilson didn't live up to the expectation after transitioning from Texas to the Angels, and that ended up happening. And then you get all of these pitchers that are like literal no-namers. And, and now you go in and get Dylan Bundy from Baltimore, and then go and get Julio Teheran from the Braves, that they're already kind of in, organizations where they've been tacked on so many times. We've been watching highlights of them and their pitching locations and their velocities. I don't know. And they couldn't. And this is a team that couldn't pull the trigger on Strasburg, Bumgarner, Cole. Like, they couldn't even pull the trigger on any of those top starters just to start that rotation again.
They got Ohtani, and I think he's finally going to be back to pitch this year.
Oh, but it's like, to me, even if you have Shohei Ohtani back, it's still not going to be enough to really pull it. Because think about it. Look at the difference between them and the Mets. At least the Mets have a rotation. That's the only thing.
Do we?
Like, but you have a stud as the start of the rotation in Jacob deGrom. That's the one thing. And following that, you actually have a pretty good pitcher in Carlos Carrasco, which I was very surprised of that. And there are a couple of other arms that are mixed up into between, and that's where I think the Mets are really kind of stepping into the right direction, where they're trying to keep their rotation stable and at the same time fixing up more of that bullpen to getting them out of innings and win potential close games.
They still need some help badly in the bullpen. The rotation, I'm not worried about at this point. I'm very curious to see how things work out this year, especially for Stroman. Carrasco, I'm excited to see him in the Mets rotation right now. They're still trying to figure out. I believe Luis Rojas was saying the other day they may end up going with a 6-man rotation. It's not like it's going to be a regular thing, but they may start with a 6-man rotation. So I'm intrigued to see what goes on and what they decide to go with in regards to their rotation this year. But we're a month out, and we'll see how it plays out.
And it's interesting too, because I did see recently that the Mets ended up getting Taijuan Walker. I'm interested to see how they're going to really adjust his mechanics, because I think he's still a guy that I think still has a shot, but I'd like to see how the pitching staff really adjusts his mechanics and his velocity and really kind of makes him into, one of those serviceable type of pitchers in the rotation, regardless of where he starts at. I'd like to see exactly how that fits in and how that benefits for him. That'll help guys out that eventually, when Syndergaard comes back soon from his injury, then that'll help give the Mets more momentum moving forward.
I totally agree with that, and I believe he's looking to be back in June for Thor. But you know what? Like, you speak with your pitching coach, you go over whatever you think needs to be worked on and what they see that they can possibly work on, but also you talk to the vets that you have on that team, like Jacob deGrom, like Thor. Carrasco's been in the league for quite some time. You get whatever advice you can get from them as well and see what you can do to retool and refine your mechanics and take it from there.
Absolutely. So, and even so, that we're digging in with both of our teams, Mets and of course the Oakland A's. Obviously this is always the usual with the A's. It's a rinse repeat type of situation, because of the fact of we build up a lot of these studs from the farm system, and then eventually by like 3, if not 4 years in the making, they then go away to different contracts. They get paid more, and it's going to be interesting to see how the A's really perform, because I do have like all of the list of transactions. So recently the A's ended up acquiring and signing Trevor Rosenthal. Me personally, I've watched him multiple times in San Diego and in St. Louis. There always seems to be something with Trevor that, like, he can't really deliver under the pressure. Because remember, a closer is a guy that can handle pressure and is a guy that is willing to just throw strikes, get the outs, and close out games. When I'd seen him sometimes in St. Louis, it almost made it feel like it was always a pressurous situation with him. And it was either he will deliver or he'll blow it. That was usually how it was. But I kind of see him that I understand where they're trying to bolster they're trying to bolster the bullpen, because of the fact of, the A's pitching staff was probably one of the best from the Tampa Bay Rays and then so many others in the top 5s, and that's where they wanted to continuously keep that reputation for them. So having Trevor Rosenthal, I kind of see him more as just like a 6th, 7th, maybe possibly an 8th inning guy. I just don't see him as a potential closer, in my opinion.
That was another guy that the Mets were looking to sign, but I think it was another situation similar to us losing out on Brad Hand in regards to these guys wanting to be closers for whatever team decided to go with them. And they are still content, I guess is the best word to use. They're content with Edwin Diaz, which I'm still like nervous as hell about, because let's see how it goes like the first month of the season, month and a half, and see like how many situations he puts himself in when he has the opportunity to get a save, and how many times he'll blow it or not, because like I think if that happens, all Met fans, 7-line included, everybody's going to lose their mind when that happens.
Right. And it's the same thing too with the A's, because think about it. This is also a team that now is going to be in a new year without Liam Hendricks. The fact that, he was a stud closer that was getting the job done, and now he moves on to the Chicago White Sox for a contracted deal. Now, I'd honestly say that, because the A's have gone through so many different closers over the years. I mean, Houston Street, Grant Balfour, Ryan Cook, Sean Doolittle, and then, of course, you're there with Liam Hendricks and a bunch of others. And it just kind of seems like it's always that rinse repeat type of situation, because they'll go on to like a closer after like 2 years, and then they'll find another one at some point down the stretch. So it'll be interesting to see how that really pans out. But they still managed to keep at least a couple of their vets. Like I like the fact that they re-signed Yasmiro Petit, because I do think he's kind of like that ace in the hole in the bullpen. Whenever you need him to get up into important innings, he's going to deliver. I like the fact they kept him, and I think he's going to have at least another consistent season. The other part is too, Sergio Romo's coming back to the Bay, but he's not going to be with the San Francisco Giants. He's going to be with the Oakland A's. That's going to be interesting to see how he really pans out with this, because most of his championships were with the Giants at one point. But we have seen at times, sometimes he'd either be locked on or he'd sometimes lose it as well. But I do see him as also a potential 8th inning setup guy, because I've seen him do that multiple times in San Francisco.
He just took a trip over the bridge. He'll be all right.
Oh, yeah, he'll be fine. But what really intrigues me, and I have to see how this works out, but the A's, of course, trading away Chris Davis to the Texas Rangers for Elvis Andrus. I'm one that and initially this is also too where they lost Marcus Semien to a 1-year, $18 million contract to the Toronto Blue Jays, which I don't understand that. I really don't understand that signing, because you have Bo Bichette there at shortstop. He is going to be a rising star with the Toronto Blue Jays for the next couple of years. You're going to move Semien over to second? I'm not sure how that's going to pan out. And this is also a guy that I understand he wanted to get paid more, because in 2019, he was top 3 in AL MVP. He was also a guy that, had a really good batting average, hit about close to 30 plus homers. And he also got on base majority of the time. So I understand that he has been built to that reputation, but I'm not sure how the Toronto Blue Jays are really going to play with this. But getting Elvis Andrus, I think, is very interesting. I can't knock at his glove skills. I think he's real good defensively, but it'll be interesting to see where they put him in the lineup, because I kind of projected to see Ramon Laureano leading off, Elvis Andrus batting second, and then by 3-4, you could probably have Matt Chapman, Matt Olson, and then have Steven Piscotty at 5. I want to keep Piscotty at 5 at all costs, because I still think he's the second best player for the A's that can hit. He also hits situationally and is a guy that drives and runs.
Well, you better hope that Chapman stays in Oakland and doesn't come to Queens.
Oh, good Lord. You're going to continuously push this on me every time. Oh, man. But what was also what I thought was very interesting? The fact that the A's are bringing back Jed Lowry. They're bringing back Jed Lowry on a minor league contract. I mean,
not gonna last.
No, I don't see him. I don't see him lasting, because I did like Jed Lowry when they traded for him in 2013 out of Houston, and it worked, but it's not going to be that same. It's not going to be the same one.
Last year with the Mets, dude never played.
No.
That's why you just got signed to a minor league contract, because they're probably going to be done with you really, really quick.
Yeah, and he never stayed healthy.
Nope.
Yeah, that's what's kind of the the unfortunate part. But I'd like to see. I know he still has some good years on him, but I'd like to see what Mitch Moreland does. I'd like to see how he produces, because ultimately the DH position's wide open for everybody in Oakland. I mean, they're not going to move Matt Olson away from first base. Absolutely not. Because, I mean, he's won Gold Gloves at that position, and he works well with him and Chapman at the corners. And what'll be interesting to see is, because of the fact that the DH is open, are you going to put more? I see them putting Mitch Moreland at the DH, and maybe for like days off for Matt Olson, they're going to probably put Moreland at first at times.
Mm-hmm.
They may end up swapping that, back and forth. So, and this is a guy who is used to the American League West because of the fact that this is a guy who started his career in Texas.
Right.
No, so I'd like to see how Mitch Moreland really produces for the A's this next year.
Have to wait and see.
Yeah, but you got anything so far with as far as, the Mets are going? Because I know Francisco Lindor is smiling right now as he's up there in Queens. I've seen a bunch of pictures. I see, a bunch of scoops on him getting some reps up there in shortstop. It's like you can't wait any longer for just the official season to come around.
He's very happy to be with the Mets right now. I watched the press conference yesterday. It was for about 40 minutes. One thing I could say about him, he's very professional. That press conference, for anybody that asked him a question, he called the reporters by their names and everything. And they did bring up the contract extension, and they're asking him, like, why do you not want to talk about it after such and such a point? And he made it clear that, like, he doesn't want it to be something that affects him and his play. He doesn't want it to be something that affects the team. So I get where he's coming from with that. He also had stated how happy he was for Tatis and the contract that he just got, and how he's just looking forward to playing this year. He's still trying to get to know these guys. Him and Jeff McNeil have been working out the last 2 days, and they're trying to develop that chemistry, especially when it comes to double plays and everything. He's looking forward to just being around the guys, especially hitting wise. Just wants to be able to pick their brains and even have guys pick his brain. He said that, like, he feels that, like, he's able to talk to some of these guys, and while some of his teammates seem to come off as a little shy. But again, we're only like a day or two in since they've been in front of each other for spring training and everything. So
right,
just let the chemistry run its course and see what happens with that. But the one thing that I took out of the press conference yesterday was he is part of the players union, and they were asking him questions about that and the CBA. And he had mentioned how one thing that he can't stand when it comes to baseball now is how analytics is taking over. And when he said that, my jaw dropped. I was just like, yes, you're officially my new favorite Met. Because the way he broke it down was situational baseball, and where, like, he feels like if he's being subbed out for somebody, like if somebody were to pinch hit for him because he's like 0 for 10 for a guy, while this guy that's going up in replace to him is like got 2 hits off of him, like, what makes you think that I don't want to finally get this guy back and make something happen? And I'm just like, yo, he's absolutely spot on with this. Like, and this is where, like, I've said it over and over and over again, analytics is killing the game.
Yeah.
And he was saying, talking from the spots about, like, tradition and stuff, this is, you play the game traditionally, you play situational baseball, you play small ball.
Yep.
Analytics does not need to be the end all be all. And you can clearly see that now with the managers that have been hired, because the managers, the people that they're hiring are yes men, and these guys are not getting big money contracts like they once were either.
Right. No, and that's the one thing that, like, again, when politics and, money's involved with all of this stuff, and, with all these analytics and statistics, it doesn't mean a damn thing, when it comes to the postseason, because the postseason is meant to be pressurized. It's meant to be, you're locked in at the plate and everything else, and every situation matters. And listen, I will take a base hit to right field with a runner at second and third over anything. I don't care whether or not, he hits a home run, because that's not what I care about. Yes, you're going to have home run hitters in that lineup, but at the same time, that's not a be all end all thing, and that's initially where you get base hits, you get on base, and you pressurize the pitcher, make him get into his own head. But if he's strong enough that he's giving you quality innings, then that's one that's like, you know what, that was a hell of a duel. We just couldn't hit off him.
The one thing that he did mention was like, from the defensive standpoint, they were asking him about shifting and stuff. And he was saying this whole thing with analytics is like, you have your guys telling you to shift over like 2-3 steps because this guy is going to hit right here. Like, and he's like, who's to say my natural ability can't make that happen from my original spot anyways? And I'm like, this is where everything makes perfect sense. And this is somebody that like is a true old school type of player. Like, you're going specifically by your natural talent and what you can do. And it's like, analytics can't say that. Right. Oh, this guy's going to hit here freaking 85% of the time. Just move over 2-3 steps. No, let these guys play.
Yeah. Let these guys play. Even if you play into a shift, the pitcher has to execute. The pitcher initially has to execute his locations, if that's the case. But at the same time, as a batter, if you've got an opportunity where if you got an outside pitch, throw it out there, especially left-handers. If you got one that is outside, Robinson Cano done this before. Even if you got to drop a bunt down the damn line, you'll still get a double off of it. Because initially that's just telling you, like, look, you can't figure me out because I'm not going to fall for this shift. I'm just going to end up getting it the easy route. And then there you go. I got the base hit. So thank you very much for that. And that's initially how this should be played out. And then think about it. If people did it more often, you won't see shifts anymore.
Right.
You won't people will get sick and tired of it very, very fast. And people will figure it out. Just like, oh, this is ridiculous. There you go. I'll just get a small hit. That's it. Prince Sean does ask too, asking us, what do y'all think about Mookie Betts? Well, what is there to not think about? I mean, the guy is a 5-tool stud, and the fact of the matter is, I don't know what Boston's doing. And now they've gotten rid of Andrew Benintendi to Kansas City. And it's like, I don't know how they're really I don't know how they're going to pan out. Now, they still do have real good key players like JD Martinez, Rafael Devers, Michael Chavis, and Chris Sale, and so many others. They still do have
scores back as a manager.
Yeah, exactly. So they're going to try to figure this out one way or the other. And the Red Sox always have been this type of team. If you're not first, you're last. And if you're last, you're first. Like, that's always been their MO. You never see them anywhere else, in the middle, unless if it's like maybe once in a great while. That's it. But it always seems to be a routine with Boston.
I did tell you they will be at the bottom. They will be in the cellar with Baltimore this coming season, especially with I know you had the conversation on your podcast. I think it was like 2-3 weeks ago. Like, what is Boston doing? Boston is rebuilding.
Mm-hmm.
Boston is clearly rebuilding, and I think it'll be about 2-3 years before we see something solid out of them going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And so of course we got our first spotlighted team here that we also we headline, of course, as we're in spring training and we're getting ready to look for the next up and coming season, and we're looking at all 30 of these clubs. So of course, the first club that we have the spotlight for, spring training spotlight, is in fact the Arizona Diamondbacks. Now, Arizona was last in the NL West at 25-35 in a short season. Now, of course, this is a team that hadn't made the postseason since 2017. And that was initially when they had some big upgrades, like JD Martinez came in. I thought that was maybe one of the best acquisitions and the best production that he has had since being acquired by a team. Like, that is, you can't deny that. that guy was absolutely on fire in the National League. I'm very surprised, and nothing against the Boston Red Sox, but I was very surprised that no team in the National League even took a look at this and thought, dude, he can hit in this National League. Like, he's just seeing beach balls, anytime that he's being faced off against all these pitchers. But the Diamondbacks in the last couple of years have really underperformed. They lost a lot of key players, like Paul Goldschmidt was a big loss. There were a lot of different, pitchers that have come and gone. Now, the only ones that they still do have around is Robbie Ray, and a couple of others building up to their farm system. Now, of course, on some of these, signings, I mean, the only signing they've got was Asdrubal Cabrera at short, but you also do have the youngster Ketel Marte, which I think he's really emerged as a young star. And this is a guy who came out of a Seattle farm system at one point. Seattle trades away to Arizona. And then from both sides of the plate, I mean, the guy can hit, the guy can get on base. That was a huge transition for him from going from the American to National League. And he's really panned out in this, in the National League. So, looking at this with the Arizona Diamondbacks, they have a lot to work on. Now, this is a team that, of course, may be looking into a big-time rebuild, and I'm not sure exactly how they're going to really pan out for the. I still see them being last in the National League West, but this is kind of a team that they're trusting their farm system now to really kind of build up to their success, where they can at some point get competitive again in the next couple of years.
They are, they did have a lot of transactions, but the only one that truly stood out, and this transaction was actually just made yesterday, was them signing shortstop Asdrubal Cabrera. Mm-hmm. They also invited Trace Thompson to spring training. Trace Thompson, mm-hmm. as some of you know, not everybody, is the brother of NBA star Klay Thompson. I honestly see them probably a fifth place, probably last place in the division again this year. Mm-hmm. It's very hard to tell what this team, what they're trying to do
and what their identity is.
That took the words right out of my mouth. What their identity is, because they're one of those teams that's just been up and down over these last few years, because it wasn't last year, it might have been maybe the season before or 2 seasons before that, but they were looking really good and they were on the cusp of making it into the playoffs and then just fell short.
Mm-hmm. And you know what's interesting, because I look at this roster top to bottom. I mean, you look at some of these impactful players in this organization. Nick Ahmed at shortstop. This is a guy who kind of is just like a middle of the pack type of guy in the lineup. Guy that's got a decent stick, and at the same time, I just see him more as just as like a defensive liability there. So, when I look at his position, I think he's a guy that he can play defense. He can also get up on base any way that he can. But, when you look at the rest of the roster, I mean, Cole Calhoun that they get, from the Angels at one point, he comes in. I never really saw him as like a big time impactful player, but he's also a role player that I think kind of solidifies some of their holes. The other part of it is Eduardo Escobar, and one guy, aside from, Ketel Marte, but one guy that I can see, and I don't know if he may potentially get dealt by this next season, is David Peralta. I mean, the guy is very decent in the defense. He's also got a very decent stick, and he had a lot of, I think he really adjusted well. There was a part in his swing that he had to change, and it actually worked out really good. There was a time where he was actually locked in. He was seeing a lot of pitches, and he was actually crushing the ball. So, and I don't know how long he might actually stay in Arizona, but I feel like there may be somewhere he might get dealt this season.
There's a chance that could happen. And looking at their outfielders right now, projecting for the opening day roster, you have Calhoun, you have Marte, you have Peralta, you have LeCastro. Apparently the D-backs love LeCastro's speed and his ability, and just to find a way on base. And once he does, he has a tendency to make things happen. That could open up more of a solidified spot for him. But it seems like, as of right now, Calhoun and Peralta are set at the corners while Marte is center field. But if Peralta doesn't play out the whole season, like if he potentially gets traded for whatever reason, I think LeCastro would fill that void real quickly as long as he continues to play the way he's been playing.
Absolutely. And then at that point, that's where Arizona is really going to start to kind of look more into their bright future. And, the one thing that you kind of look at too is this pitching rotation. I mean, the fact that they have Madison Bumgarner at the top, and this is a team that was coming off of Zach Greinke going to Houston. And you think about it, a state like Arizona that doesn't have any state tax. So all that guaranteed money is there. But when you look at it, they transition very heavily at their starting rotation. Now you just have Madison Bumgarner, but the rest of them are just young arms. And really the guy that just stood out amongst the rest is the youngster Zach Gallen. Yeah, Zach Gallen. And last year in 12 games of his starts, he was 3-2 with a 2.75 ERA with 82 strikeouts. So I'd like to see what this next year will be in store for Gallen, because now, without Robbie Ray, without Zach Godfrey, and some of these other guys that, they were initially building up for their rotation, now it's actually starting to get younger. I don't know how that this rotation is really going to pan out, but I don't see this really being a top rotation anyway. I just think this is more just rebuilding for the long run.
Yeah, I see it that way. And to touch on what you said with Gallen, like he was their best pitcher last year. Kelly, hopefully he should be fully recovered from the thoracic outlet surgery that he had. The guys just got to stay healthy this year. Like Bumgarner pitched well in the final 2 starts of the year after a rough start, but even Diamondbacks believe his off year had more to do with the fact that he was thrown off. Like I said before, it was his routine by COVID. This is what happened to a lot of players this past season. So hopefully things return to normal for not just him, but all these players that have said that this is why they weren't who they were last season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And we know, is from a shortened season, there was a lot of urgency for a lot of teams, so that was what was potentially building up. It was really kind of building up, momentum for some of these teams, because I think initially it was kind of interesting for a lot of just those bottom teams, because of the fact of, okay, this is a short season. If we actually just play to win games, if we win our games, people may look at us differently.
But I think that's how everybody looked at it. When it was, oh, you guys are playing 60 games, it was pretty much open for anybody. Like, you guys compete, you guys win, but it was like there was certain things that would play a role. Like, if you start a losing streak, like you start losing 8, 9 in a row, you might as well forget about even making the playoffs. Like,
right.
Every single game of those 60 games mattered. And a lot of teams took it that way as well. It was, once they announced it, oh, they're playing 60 games, I was intrigued. I was just like, I'm very curious to see how this is going to play out and how much more competitive each and every single one of these teams, how each and every single one of these games are going to be.
Right, exactly. So, well, Prince John, of course, has another question for us, but who y'all see in the World Series? It's very, 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 very early to really predict it, to be honest. If I had to think of, as far as potentialities for World Series, and I hate saying this, but I do see the Dodgers back in it again. My wild card, of course, my wild card with that, because again, this is like a non-official, official type of, prediction, but the Mets are definitely my wild card. The only thing I look at with the Mets is because I have to see how their lineup really produces now that they have Francisco Lindor in the middle of that lineup. You still are getting production out of Pete Alonso and a lot of these guys, but I'd like to see the rest of these other guys step up, like JD Davis, who's I think is emerging well. Jeff McNeil, at the same time, I'm like, he could play good defensively, but at the same time, I'd like to see the stick move.
He's a great hitter, though. He is one of the best hitters that they have right now. And this isn't me talking just because I'm a Met fan. he's a solid hitter. He has excellent plate discipline. I'm hoping to see him with like an average by the end of the season.
And
like,
at the same time, looking at Dominic Smith.
320. And Dom Smith. Yeah.
So I think honestly, like the Dodgers to me for the National League, but my wild card, the Mets. If I had to look at the American League, I honestly would want to say the Yankees because it's not because of Stanton and Judge, but you're going to get Garrett Cole, who's going to give you quality innings. They stacked up with Jameson Taillon and a couple of other real good arms. And, they got rid of J-Hap. They got rid of James Paxton. They are still trying to stay consistent there. But I think, honestly, if things really do pan out right, I may be potentially looking at either the A's or the Astros for the American League. A's or Astros. Because the one thing that the A's are so good at is building. They're real good at building potential ball players. And they started so cheap. It's been something that has worked for 20 years, and it's a rinse repeat.
Moneyball.
Yeah, it's a Moneyball situation. But the thing of it is that the Astros, yes, they've lost George Springer, but you still have Bregman, you still have Altuve, you still have Correa, and you still have Michael Brantley. There, and you have Yordan Alvarez that's going to bring you production. It pisses me off so much, but that's what you're getting out of Houston. And at the same time, Zach Greinke, possibly Justin Verlander.
I was just about to ask, is he still there?
Yeah, I think he's on that last year of the contract.
Okay.
So you're going to get him back. You got Greinke there. You got some young arms. So I'd like to see how this rotation plays. I'm not going to, bash their bullpen because sometimes their bullpen really can play. But that's a bold take, BL. Listen, I'd like to say the Chicago White Sox.
Bulls ain't the word.
Yeah, I'd like to say the White Sox, but here's the thing. They're still kind of young. It's still going to take some time because I'm excited to see what Michael Kopech can do because I haven't seen so much of him. I've already seen Lucas Giolito. I already said this kid was going to be really good. Ronaldo Lopez. And then hopefully Michael Kopech in the middle of this thing. That's going to be interesting. That is going to be one that's going to be really interesting to watch. But their lineup's real good. I'd like to see Yohan Moncada go off this year because I had him in fantasy baseball. That guy had close to 300 batting average. He hit close to about 20 plus homers, and he was a guy that was getting on base. Like he was a guy that was literally doing everything and just playing at second base. Luis Robert, I think, is going to be really good too. I'd like to see how Jose Abreu picks up where he left off from his MVP season. Like to see how, he plays out with this one. But I think they're still kind of young. Hopefully they may make an interesting jump this next year. And then the Padres, still kind of young.
$161 million payroll. I just looked it up. I thought it would have been a lot more than that.
Yeah. I thought it would have been a lot more than that.
They're spending money in San Diego, though, man.
Where in the hell is that coming from for California? What the hell?
Your guess is as good as mine.
Oh my God. That's what I'm saying. Like that's a heavy left side of the infield. It's 600 million tops.
And you got Hosmer at first.
Yep, you got Hosmer at first. You got Will Myers that you're also bouncing back and forth with. You got Jake Cronenworth.
What is it? Hold on, let me see what his base salary is.
His base salary is
20.
probably...
No, Myers, his base is 20. Machado is 30. This might not be updated because I don't see Tatis's money here unless...
No, it's not updated yet. I think they're still kind of doing...
Yeah, right now, it's the pre-arbitration, it's $1 million.
Yeah, so they probably still are paying that much, but I don't know. I just kind of see this as something where like I feel like when teams overspend on position players rather than actually spending the money to get a lot like an overhaul of players.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know how this is going to pan out well. I really, really don't. Think about this. When I saw this, my first thought was Kansas City. My very first thought was the Kansas City Chiefs because you're going to pay Patrick Mahomes all this money, which I get it. But think about the toll it's going to take. It's going to take a toll on your defense. It's going to take a toll on your offensive line. I don't know how they're going to recover this.
Yeah, like look, oh my God, who's the D lineman that got paid like a day or two after?
Chris Jones?
Chris Jones, yeah. Like obviously there was still money there. He got paid.
Travis Kelce got paid. Tyreek Hill got paid. Like, and you still are hanging on to that contract with Tyrann Mathieu. And then, of course, you go and get Frank Clark. So I don't know. I mean, I just think of it this way. But look at that whole entire secondary. Bashaud Breeland is not that great.
There's a bum.
He's not all that. And so that sometimes can take a toll on your secondaries.
The one thing though that a lot of people were complaining, like a lot of people are just up in arms, like from the time this contract extension was announced, was like he's only played 143 games in the majors,
right?
And he's getting a 14-year contract for that much money. Like,
yeah,
there's some. They have to see something that everybody else doesn't. That's what it's coming down to right now.
Yeah, they have to at this point. They really, really have to because, and again, I understand people get overexcited when they win like their first championship, like ever in their franchise, or, it's been a first time in a very, very long time. But, sometimes it usually depends on how you recover afterward. I mean, look at the Philadelphia Eagles. They clearly did not recover after that first one. Now they're a mess. They are a mess. Oh my God.
Once it's gone though.
Well, yeah, Carson Wentz and Dougie P and a lot of these guys are gone. And now Alshon Jeffrey's gone. And so is, Deshaun Jack. A lot of these guys are gone. And then now you're saying, oh, there's quarterback competition between Nate Sudfeld and freaking Jalen Hurts. Are you kidding me? Like, why and how? How could that possibly be? You already know that like Jalen Hurts is capable of playing in this damn game. Why would you still give Nate Sudfeld a chance? I don't understand that. You clearly saw how he played, and it's proven. He's not capable. He's not one of those types of quarterbacks that's going to really win you those big games. Sorry. This is not going to happen. Like, yeah, I don't get it. But but again, like it sometimes it exposes some of these teams. It exposes some of these teams on how they recover by that next year. And clearly that's what happened. Carson Wentz gets hurt again. Everybody's ranting and raving about Nick Foles, who's just a 1-year wonder and all this other stuff. And now a potentiality that he might be back again.
I've said it time and time again, though, as long as he's been in the league, especially from the time he got that contract extension, he is hands down the most overrated quarterback in the league. Did not deserve to be making $33 million a year. Yeah. No way. While Dak is still sitting there waiting to get a contract extension from geriatric Jerry. Come on.
God. Yeah, that is going to be a story I will be talking about up on my show as well. I don't understand this at all. And Dallas, you're overpaying all of these players that are initially top 20 players. You're overpaying every single one of them. And that's just one that's just really going to kill him. But back into the, back into the work of things, but it really is going to be interesting to kind of see how this entire season really does pan out, and especially how spring training really kind of comes around, because now, and this is interesting because there is some talks about, about fans being back into the stands, especially starting with spring training. So of course, Arizona and Florida, I'd like to see how Florida does. And actually, no, scratch that. I'd like to see how both of them do, because Arizona's one hot spot, Florida's one hot spot. So I'd like to see how all of these spring training ballparks really kind of pan out with this. So
Arizona was hesitant to even have spring training.
Yeah, they really were.
There was a lot of talks about them trying to figure out how they were going to go about this, but they're there now. So I guess it wasn't that much of a concern for them since they have everything moving forward right now.
Yeah, they really, really do. And who knows? Maybe they have some sort of plan, behind closed doors. Maybe that's the case. But yeah, I'd like to see kind of how they handle things. If they handle this very, very well and they handle this very thoroughly, maybe this will be something where like we'll be very optimistic about the season. We'll be very excited for it.
I'm just hoping to be at Citi Field a couple of times this season, because not being there for a single game last year just felt that wasn't normal for me. Yeah. That took me out of a routine. That took me out of like my summer routine. So,
oh yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I probably will not be, up in Oakland watching the A's play, only just because of, I have my own concerns about it. But at the same time, I mean, even if I'd like to see them play, whether they play the Angels majority of the time, or they'll at some point play the Padres in Petco Park, or even just going up to San Francisco and watching them play at Oracle Park. I think that would be a lot of fun as well. I just think that because you think about how the Coliseum usually is in Rickey Henderson Field, it's jam packed with Raider fans. If they realized what my other colors were, it probably will not be so friendly.
Yeah, definitely not.
Yeah, that's why I'm just like, you know what? I'll keep this green and gold on for as long as I can before they end up finding this out. So, but yeah, I'm very excited for what this season's really going to bring for all of us. And I'm hoping that things really just are, I just really hope that everything's just kind of smooth. I'm kind of over this whole deal where like there's more talk, enough talk. It's time to play.
Yep.
It's time to play, damn it. But yeah, we'll see how it all goes from there. But I really do appreciate everybody that came on here for this edition of the first ever episode of Turn 2 podcast, strictly all for baseball, with myself, Jake the Snake Silva, and of course, Jeff Hammond, aka Hammer. So in our next episode, in the next team that we will definitely spotlight here for spring training will be your division rivals, the Atlanta Braves. Now, and this is a team that, they win the NL East and they make it all the way to the NLCS. I liked that matchup between them against the Dodgers. I was hoping for it because of the fact of this is a Braves team that this is right now kind of all or nothing for them, if I'm looking at this straight, because they've got some real good young arms in Max Fried. Mike Soroka is going to be coming back healthy. And they have a bunch of rotation guys. And then initially, I was very surprised at the contract extension with Marcell Ozuna, and it didn't get asked for more money. Like, that was probably the smallest contract I'd ever seen. Like, I look at the length and then I look at the price afterward, and I'm like, really? For a guy that he's got a dumb stick. Like, this is a guy that hits homers. This is a guy that, somehow, some way, he just still keeps his average up.
And so many people, like, at least out here, were like, oh, the Mets should sign him. I'm like, why? Why are we doing this? Like, because we didn't get Springer. Oh, let's go for the next best thing. Let's go to Ozuna. I was like, I don't look at him being the next best thing, but
right.
It's, the Braves have a tendency to stick with some guys until they're almost 50 years old. So,
yeah. Well, and if they keep like a consistent, excuse me, but I think if they keep a consistent rate, like, think of it this way, like Freddie Freeman. Freddie Freeman was the only guy on a long-term contract that has still kept up his numbers.
Yeah.
And that's kind of one guy that has been the heart and soul of the Braves and winning National League MVP. I mean, this was a guy that, he's been consistent on his batting average, consistent on his defense. That's one guy that I'm like, I can understand. And I saw that when they first released that contract, because think about it. This is also a team that they've let go of Justin Upton. They've let go of Andrelton Simmons, which I never understood why. But then again, we probably would have never seen Dansby Swanson.
True.
That would, yeah. And I think that's what it was initially building up for. But they've got a new arm in Charlie Morton that I'd like to see how he plays, because this is also coming from a Tampa Bay pitching rotation to coming into Atlanta. So who knows how that's really going to pan out, because I don't understand, but for whatever reason, I can never knock on Tampa with their pitching. And now they're going to get Chris Archer back. And Chris Archer fell off the wagon the second he came away, but he went away from Tampa. He wasn't the same pitcher afterward.
That's because of how Tampa utilizes their pitchers or don't utilize their pitchers. And I'm not saying don't utilize them in a bad way, because they play by analytics. And this is the reason that they didn't win it, because they pulled Blake Snell. It's the way that they manage their pitching rotation, how to utilize their pitchers game in and game out.
Yeah. And I think that's initially where, they've stayed consistent on that with their pitching rotation. That entire pitching staff from top to bottom. I mean, they've got a really good bullpen as well. One that, you just can't tamper with. They had a lot of real good arms, especially when we watched them in the World Series, and of course the interesting part is where you were putting them situationally, because if they were really hitting off, they were hitting off of the right-handers, but they were struggling against the lefties. So even if you put the lefties in the middle of it, and then at some point get them into a situation where now you could put a right-hander in because it seems comfortable. The situation has now kind of steered away from right-handers. Now they're trying to lock into left-handers. I think that's initially where you throw in the ace in the hole, to where that's going to be the mass confusion for the opposing team, where they're trying to figure it out. So that's kind of how I see that with them. But, like I said, we'll have the Braves, and we'll spotlight them into seeing exactly where, we'll see them for next season. But yeah, the Arizona Diamondbacks, I do see them being last in the National League West again, for the fact of this is just a young rebuilding organization. They're trusting more on their farm system, which I'm not sure exactly who their big time studs are. I know we mentioned about the young outfielder that if David Peralta gets dealt away, that's going to be a kid that is really going to be the spotlight of this organization. Yep. And then who knows exactly who else may end up being on the market for the next couple of years forward. So, but yeah, this is one of the first of many episodes that we have here on the Spotlight Sports Network. And I'm excited to continuously do this podcast here with one of my good guys that knows a lot about baseball, just like I do. And we're willing to collab, and we're able to talk about him and give our insights for him. Any final thoughts before we end up wrapping this up?
Baseball season is here, and I can't wait any longer. I wish I could go to Arizona just once and watch a game from the pool in the outfield.
My God, yeah. Yeah, that was always going to be since I moved out on my own, I always talked about, planning out of going out to Mesa, Arizona, just to watch the A's play over there. And, and just watching all these spring training games, because that was always the one thing that I loved. The spring training game I caught was the A's and the Cubs. And what sucked about that was one thing was all the players got dealt. That was the 2015 year. All of them got dealt. Donaldson, freaking Cespedes, Brandon. Oh my God. I was so pissed that whole year. And the only person who really stuck around was Josh Reddick. That was it. And then that was actually the only home run the A's hit was from Max Muncy before he ends up getting, waived, and then he goes to the Dodgers, and now he's a stud for the Dodgers.
Was Josh Reddick coming up to bat to Careless Whisper at the time?
Yep. Yes, he was.
Fucking awesome.
Yeah. And at that time, that was when I was watching Chris Bryant play as well, because the fact of it was a home welcome to him back into Vegas again.
Yeah.
And I also watched Jake Arrieta pitch. I mean, that kid when he was with the Cubs, this was after he was acquired from Baltimore on a small deal that eventually turned into a big one. That was his Cy Young year.
He still hasn't got picked up yet, right?
The Cubs brought him back. He's back with the Cubs again.
The Cubs did bring him back.
Yep.
Oh.
And even Gooley is just like, they should have never got rid of him. They should have never got rid of him. That was stupid. That was dumb.
Oh, there you go. He's back at Wrigley.
Yeah, he's back. Yeah, he's back up at Wrigley again, and I'm sure he's probably going to be back to his kale diet as he usually is. Like, that's the only baseball player I could think of that handles kale. I've never met anybody that, who handles that. That's crazy. I mean, you think of Tom Brady, who could eat avocado ice cream and all that, but kale is just a higher step ahead.
Avocado ice cream? Ew.
Yeah, it's a real thing. It's a real thing. If you look at it with Tom Brady's workouts,
but
dude.
Then again, wasn't he drinking like avocado tequila or something during the parade? So yeah, it doesn't surprise me.
Nope, not at all. Apparently, is like they say, avocado is literally the superfood.
Nature's
of everything. Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all mental ages, thank you guys once again for joining us tonight. For those that are watching us live on YouTube, make sure to check out the links in the description. Make sure to like, sub, and hit that bell. Nice. That came right on point as I said that.
Yes, it did.
And again, we're definitely looking forward to doing this. This was something that me and Jake had talked about over these last few weeks. As many of his shows I've jumped on, sometimes even jumping on accidentally, it was like we had to do something as our own show together. And what better way to do it than covering Major League Baseball, one of the sports that we love the most. So definitely stay tuned. We'll definitely have a lot more content coming up. And like he said, we'll be talking about the Atlanta Braves next week, and probably coming out with some other breaking news as it comes across for us throughout the week. So yeah.
Absolutely. So this is where it's day one, and it's going to start it up right here with spring training right here around the corner. And we are glad to be having it back. And so we'll see exactly, because once these spring training games come up, man, it's going to be a lot of fun, and we're going to have a lot more insights up on them. So I'm really excited to see exactly where this goes here up on the Spotlight Sports Network, but I think this is going to be great. So we appreciate all of you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. And we will see you guys on the next episode of Turned To Podcast. Take care, you guys. Be safe, stay healthy, and we will see you up on the next episode. Take care.
Wash your hands and your asses.